Every Sunday, the Sanders family made their way to visit their cherished Jason, who had passed away a few years prior. Jason, the husband of Savannah and father to Eric and Gavin, had succumbed to a heart condition, leaving a profound void in their lives. However, today was different. They arrived to find a wolf standing sentinel over Jason's grave, unyielding and unmoving. Unsure of how to handle the situation, they called the police, who decided to review the security footage to trace the wolf's origins. What they uncovered was astonishing, leaving Savannah weak in the knees, unable to comprehend the revelation before her. At first, Savannah struggled to make sense of the footage, questioning everything she saw. The police, however, reassured her that the images were genuine and that she needed to confront the unsettling truth, no matter how shocking it might be. Reluctantly, Savannah and the officers reviewed the footage together, knowing it was their only path to uncovering the reality behind the bizarre scene. It didn't take long for them to reveal the disturbing truth that lay beneath the surface. The police cautiously informed Savannah that they needed to excavate the grave, explaining that leaving it as it was posed an even greater danger. With no other option, Savannah reluctantly agreed. But why was there a wolf standing over the grave, refusing to budge? What was it about the footage that so deeply unsettled her? And why was digging up the grave the only solution? Jason's death had always been a tragedy, especially since he had seemed so healthy, leaving his loved ones with lingering questions. Although Jason had many acquaintances, Savannah had only met most of them at his funeral, and her curiosity about them had remained dormant until this fateful day. As a family, they had a tradition every Sunday. Right after church, they visited Jason's grave. One time they brought flowers, and another time they quickly swept the grave with a broom before leaving. Early on, Eric and Gavin, who sometimes went along somewhat against their will, noticed something unusual. This time, it was the Sunday before the tragic wolf incident. Eric walked ahead and arrived at the cemetery before his mother and younger brother. As he approached his father's grave, he noticed traces of mud alongside some other remarkable things, including clear footprints in the mud. Eric had a strange feeling about it and immediately informed his mother. She didn't think much of it, suggesting it probably belonged to one of the cemetery employees, and then asked Eric to put flowers on the grave. He decided to leave since he couldn't find anything or anyone unusual. A day later, the school week started, and Eric completely forgot his premonition from that Sunday. He was far too busy with school and didn't follow through on his plan to return to the cemetery. Had he done so, he might have prevented a lot of misery. It is now Sunday again. Savannah, Eric, and Gavin walk out of the church, ready to go to the cemetery. Savannah is particularly excited today for no immediate reason and suggests having lunch nearby before they go. How differently things could have turned out if she hadn't made that suggestion. The family enjoys their lunch before heading to the grave. This time, they walk next to each other while the cemetery comes into view. Then there is that terrible image. An emaciated wolf stands on Jason's grave. Savannah and Gavin freeze completely while Eric slowly approaches. The wolf notices Eric, shows his teeth, and Eric understands that he must keep his distance. Filled with fear, he slowly walks back to his mother and little brother to ask what they should do. By that time, Savannah is already calling 911 in a panic. She has to repeat her story several times because she is simply not believed. They ask if she has been drinking, while she desperately emphasizes that she understands it sounds bizarre, but it is actually true. Finally, she gets the help she asks for. A police car is immediately sent her way. The police arrive shortly after and are met at the gate by Savannah. They are very skeptical and initially ask her if she didn't just see a dog instead of a wolf. But Savannah persists, and rightly so. She escorts the officers to the grave, where Eric and Gavin keep an eye on the wolf from a safe distance. The wolf is still there, sniffing the grave. Then the officers finally see that Savannah has not lied. Their response says it all. They are scared to death. They had underestimated the situation, and now that they see the wild wolf, they don't know what to do. They do the only thing they are authorized to do. They seal off the cemetery and call animal specialists. Shortly afterward, they begin looking for the camera footage. This whole scene is really starting to take a turn. Savannah watches as the police are busy cordoning off everything. She stays close to ensure that she is informed as soon as they know more. One of the officers approaches her to ask if there is anything he can do for her. She replies that she would also like to see the footage. The officer has bad news for her. He tells her that she may eventually be allowed to see the footage, but initially, only the police are allowed to view the images. Savannah is frustrated and disagrees, but the officer insists it has to do with privacy laws. Savannah is stunned. Meanwhile, she takes a look at the wolf, which is still on the grave. Savannah can't believe it. What could be there? Why didn't the wolf respond to the humans? And why did it seem so determined? Savannah realizes she must find out what is going on here, as her husband would have wanted. She then takes a risk and follows the officers to the cemetery office. She thinks that the officers will look at the camera images there. At least they would get closer to the truth, and Savannah feels she deserves it too. She is onto something. Savannah then sees the officers watching the footage on a large screen. They seem to be reviewing the nighttime images first while Savannah secretly watches from outside. It is difficult for her to see exactly what is happening in the images, but then there is clearly something to see. A figure leaves something on a grave, presumably a man dressed unrecognizably. He behaves mysteriously in the images, and it seems that he has been at the grave on several occasions. Unfortunately, that isn't all. The last image clearly shows the man taking out a small shovel and starting to dig in the grave. Savannah sees him plant something in it and loses her composure. She collapses to her knees as she witnesses someone dishonoring her late husband. She bursts into the room, catching the officers off guard. At first, they consider asking her to leave, though they can see the depth of her emotions. Just then, the lead officer steps in with a plan to address the situation. Savannah holds her breath in anticipation. They decide to excavate the grave to prevent any future incidents. As they dig, they uncover a peculiar substance within the tomb. The footage reveals a man, an old rival of Jason, who had intended to disgrace him by contaminating his grave with something that would attract wild animals. The wolf is safely returned to its natural habitat, and the man is taken into custody.